As a child, I never took full responsibility for any of my actions because I knew I would always get by with the excuse of just being a kid. I had a hard time holding myself accountable and accepting consequences. I would take advantage of many things around me and never understood why I was wrong. You never realize the value in what you have until you lose what you have, is what my grandpa would always say to me. At the time, I had no clue what the statement truly meant or if it was even accurate. I thought it was just my grandpa just being the talkative person he is. Over time, the statement began to apply to my own life, and I regretted not understanding it earlier. My mother has three children: my sister, my brother, and myself. Each time she was pregnant, she shared her pregnancy with one of her sisters. I was born around the same time as my cousin Marquise. He was born 2 months prior, and as children, we never got along. Marquise was a sneaky child who would do malicious things to hurt me. He would lock me in rooms, eat all the snacks before I could get to them, and would taunt me by saying nobody liked me. I would refrain from crying in front of him, but my feelings were hurt. Overall, even though we knew we had to love one another, we genuinely hated one another. We would tell each other how much we did not like the other and how we wished the other was never even born. He was jealous that because I was a girl, I could hang out with the rest of our cousins who were mostly girls, apart from 3 boys, including him. I was jealous that because he was a boy, he was able to do more things like be in charge if we went to the store, pick the channel station, and helping my grandparents with jobs that they felt were so-called for boys. However, all of that came to an end when we lost the head of our family, Grandpa. While most people think death will bring people together, the death of my grandfather broke my entire family apart. My family suffered from severe depression and refrained from even talking to one another. It was even a hassle to figure out who would be able to sit in the limo for his funeral. Even when the family tried to maintain peace for the sake of my grandmother, everyone still argued and began to form grudges against one another. However, that tragic event brought Marquise and myself much closer, and our interactions drastically changed. Prior to Grandpa's death, we wouldn't even speak to one another outside. He would be outside with his friends, would see me, and would keep doing whatever he was doing. It got to the point where I forgot we were even cousins and convinced myself to just totally disregard him whenever he came around. 2 weeks after my grandpa's funeral, I saw him outside. My plan was to just walk past him like I did any other time. Instead, he stopped me and asked me if I had money. I looked at him in shock. He pulled out his last $5 and gave it to me. He told me to get home safe. I was very surprised, and I could not stop thinking about that interaction. Even though the death improved our relationship, Marquise began to have internal issues. Over time, I witnessed him lose self-value, and what began as minor things eventually grew into more severe illegal activity. He began his criminal record with hopping a turnstile in an NYC train station and was arrested. He then moved on to joining a group that began as a music group called Fast Money. Members of this group were musically talented and began to attract many local fans. However, it also attracted enemies, and the group began to get into brawls and other violent activity. Marquise was put into a temporary juvenile detention center at the request of not only the police but also his parents. They believed that it would discipline him and help him see why he should want to live a better life. Due to 3 successful escapes, Marquise's stay moved from temporary to permanent. He finally began to comply with the detention rules and calm down until June 29, 2015. That night, Marquise received news that his best friend Jordan Barber was murdered. After a basketball game in Rucker Park, a notorious park in Harlem, Jordan and the Fast Money members were confronted by a rival gang known as Get Money Boys. A young man then fired 3 shots, one of which struck Jordan in his neck, causing him to die within the hour. My aunt, who delivered the news to Marquise, said it was one of the hardest things she's ever had to do in her life. She says Marquise reacted hysterically and repeatedly yelled, "Why?" He passed out and was taken to the infirmary. His mother received news the following morning that he had escaped again. He was found in the staircase, crying with a gun, constantly mumbling to himself, "I'm going to kill them." After this tragedy, Marquise was put into therapy and began to express his appreciation in having me as a cousin. He would tell me to stay in school and to not be like him. He called me at least twice a week to check up on me and would give me huge hugs every time I saw him. We went on a lunch date once to IHOP, and he spent most of the lunch telling me that he would always be there for me. My guess is that Jordan's murder caused him to not take advantage of anyone around him, and I respected his mad effort in trying to make up any time missed in our relationship. I appreciated him, and I told myself that this had to be the beginning of him turning his life around, which it was. That wasn't until Jordan's killers provoked a reaction from him. They would drive through our neighborhood, Polo Grounds projects, yelling, "Fuck Jordan." They even started social media attacks, making threats towards Fast Money. This is when Fast Money transformed from a music group to a gang. The entire winter of 2016, the Avenue Frederick Douglass Boulevard became a war zone. Shots were fired towards one another, police were stationed on every block, and many people were arrested or shot. The war finally came to what everyone thought would be an end on June 29, 2016. The day of the one-year memorial of Jordan Barber's death also happened to be the indictment of each member of the gang that murdered him. This was a victory for his family and his friends, and many people thought the feud was finally over. However, the war started up again when allies of the gang who murdered Jordan were ordered to go after Marquise and his friends. Again, many people were stabbed, shot, and robbed. The police finally got involved, arresting all members of the feud, including Fast Money and my cousin Marquise. Marquise was charged with 14 different crimes and has been sentenced to 25 years in prison. In other words, I would be lucky if I ever get to see him again. He calls me when he can and sends me letters about how terrible the food is. Looking back on our relationship, I wish I would have made an effort to be closer to him and get to know him deeper than the malicious little demon I saw him as. He is much more than the gang member that people see him as. Marquise had dreams of becoming an engineer and unfortunately ended up in the wrong crowd, making the wrong decisions. Moral of the story, never take advantage of anyone, but take advantage of their presence. You never know when you can lose them.